Today we're going to take a closer look at AMD. Yesterday the company had their new graphics card event where they announced two new graphics cards for the consumer market. Today I want to take a closer look at what this means for investors. So let's get started. We can see right now AMD is up roughly 2% as I am recording this episode on mid-Friday afternoon. In the past 5 days the stock is actually up 1%. Remember, the company did just recently have their third quarter earnings. There were some good, there were some bads. I actually did a video on that, so make sure to check that out.
I do want to thank The Motley Fool for sponsoring this video, and make sure to check out fool.com/Jose to get the top 10 stocks to buy right now.
For those not familiar, yesterday on November 3rd, AMD announced their two new graphics card solutions for the gaming market. We can see these are going to be available on December 13th of 2022. Their high tier price is going to be at roughly $1,000. The second is going to be roughly at $900. We can definitely see they're trying to hit the high tier market right now. And just before we go any further, I do kind of want to explain where this kind of graphics card goes in their revenue segment and how big of a portion it is for the overall business. We can see in their Q3 2022 revenue, their overall graphics card goes in this market. The gaming revenue, which was $1.6 billion in the most recent quarter, up 14% year over year. Even though this is a huge segment, it is the largest, it is tied to the largest segment, the data center. They're both tied for number one at 1.6 billion. Not all the revenue here comes from graphics card. I do want to say a majority, and AMD even mentions that a majority of this revenue is driven by the higher semi-custom products. For example, these are the chips that go on the PlayStation 5, on the Xbox Series, on the Steam Deck as well. Right now, it does seem like the lower gaming graphics revenue doesn't really impact it too much, but we can see in the gaming segment, even though this is including the graphics cards at the moment don't play a major role for the company's total revenue. If we take a closer look at AMD's Q3 transcript here at Motley Fool, they do mention a little bit about how GPUs are affecting their market in both the data center and in the consumer space. So let's read a little bit about that. But before, if you are enjoying this episode, make sure to hit the thumbs up as it does help me grow my overall audience. If you want to support a little bit more, make sure to subscribe using my link at fool.com/Jose. Finally, I just started a weekly semiconductor podcast. The link to the channel is down below and the first episode is there. I actually had another host join me, so we kind of discussed the semiconductor market and a lot of recent news, so make sure to check that out. So if we take a closer look, AMD talks a little bit about their data center GPUs. This obviously goes in their data center segment, but I do believe it's great to understand now that we're talking about the GPU market. For those not familiar, AMD has the MI200 series right now, and they are developing the MI300 series as we speak. But they do mention that their data center GPU sales are down significantly from a year ago. Main reason is same time a year ago, they were using their GPU kind of data center solutions to build out the Frontier exascale supercomputer, which obviously needs a lot of GPUs. So there was a huge drop in overall revenue in that segment. If we take a closer look at that gaming segment, which again includes the consumer GPUs, they do mention that they delivered their 6th straight quarter of record semi-custom system on chip sales. But overall, it's due to the demand of the gaming consoles from Sony and Microsoft. They do mention the gaming graphics revenue decline in the quarter based on soft consumer demand and their focus on reducing downstream GPU inventory. So we can see before AMD released these new cards, one of their main goals was to kind of reduce the inventory they had for their older generation cards, which I believe was a smart move. Now, if we take a closer look at this new graphics cards, they are the world's first gaming graphics cards to feature the advanced AMD chiplet design. This is something interesting that's happening in the semiconductor market. So back then, the big goal for semiconductors were to get their chips smaller. And that is getting a lot more difficult to do nowadays. So what companies are doing, they're doing the chiplet design. So their main core chip is getting smaller, but maybe some of the other chips within that kind of product don't need to be as small. So they start to kind of create Lego pieces where they have a small chip, where they have other chips surrounding them, where they might not be as small as their core product. And that's okay, because more than likely their core product, their core chip is the one that needs to be more efficient compared to the previous generations. Here they mention that the AMD RDNA 3 architecture chiplet design combines the 5nm and 6nm process nodes, each optimized for specific jobs. Overall, we can see that the graphics market is not a huge segment for AMD at the moment, but it's obviously great that they're moving into space and kind of producing innovative products. We saw that their cards are expected to be a higher tier range, a little bit cheaper than Nvidia. Nvidia, for example, their first tier was the 4090, which is released at $1,600. Their second is the RTX 480, which is at $1,200. Much more expensive than these two tiers that AMD released, but we have to wait till December 13th to kind of really see how the performance is. If obviously the performance for AMD is better at a cheaper price point, that's going to be bad news for Nvidia. But more than likely what's going to happen is Nvidia is going to beat in performance, but AMD might have more attractive price points. The only thing is Nvidia does have other generations of their cards. They're most likely going to release the 4070, the 4060 next. As we're talking about Nvidia, I do want to mention some of the negativities that's happening with their new generation cards. They seem to be melting at their power pin due to high wattage usage. One of the reasons that Nvidia requires more cards is because they're using a higher tier of memory, the GDDR6X. AMD is only going to be using the GDDR6, which requires less power. So for example, AMD mentioned compared to their previous generation, the 6000 series, it's only going to be a few wattage over that. So it's not going to be a huge upgrade change. You don't need to have a huge super beefy power supply. They're saying, hey, our pins are not going to burn out. Before we finish the episode, I do want to say on November 10th, AMD is going to be releasing their next generation of data center CPUs. I do believe this is a huge growth opportunity for this company. Make sure to stay tuned in this channel to get more information when they release their Genoa, their 4th generation data center CPU. Take care, have a good day, and see you next time.